I'd ordered some of his papers from Arizona University, hoping to find something about Westall. Wow, what is all this? There's a lot of stuff here. James McDonald's journal. His trip to Melbourne. There'll be stuff in here about Westall. Has to be.
And recording next a discussion with Mr. Andrew Greenwood in connection with the Westall sighting. This business about the headmaster, he's the one who seemed to be quite influenced by some pressures to keep things quiet.
He just told me that an Air Force officer had been out to the school, and I was teaching at the time, and he told me that he wasn't going to interrupt my class so that I could speak to them. He promptly told them to get lost together. They kind of had much time with him, because I know I was very friendly with the senior master of the school. He said they were only in his office for very few minutes, and Sambleby had sort of come out fuming and muttering, what rot, and all the rest of it.
It's nice to have somebody telling the RAAF that it's a lot of nonsense and sending them packing. Victims of their own propaganda here.
Yes.
Now I had further corroborating evidence that the Air Force was involved at Westall. But students said other senior authorities also came to the high school.
I was called down to the headmaster's office, and there were two men in the headmaster's office, very well-dressed gentlemen, in suits. They weren't introduced to me in person, and I don't know where they came from. From my references now as an adult, I would say they were Asia.
So this is the actual office?
Oh, this feels quite weird, yes. Yes. There was a desk down this side here, and the headmaster was over here on that side, and the two men were standing over there, and I stood with my back to the window. Only one man spoke, and he started off by, we'd like you to go through what you said happened yesterday. He was firing questions at me fairly rapidly. Then we went into, and we suppose you think you saw a flying saucer. And I'm like, well, I didn't say that. I said I saw an object, and we suppose you saw little green men.
Can you remember how you felt once it was over?
When I was actually in the confrontation situation with the men, felt very, very angry. When I came out, I think I burst into tears. They were certainly Australian government, and I think it was part of their job to keep everything quiet and to not let the facts come out. They knew more than what they were saying. It was their job to squash what was being seen. It was a bunch of kids that saw this, so we would be able to squash this down.
The authorities had found a way to silence the children, but they still had unfinished business with the teacher, Andrew Greenwood. He told me that two officers came to his home and threatened him under the Official Secrets Act. They said that he couldn't have seen a flying saucer at Westall because there were no such things as flying saucers. They threatened to tell people he was alcoholic, even though he wasn't. As a first-year teacher with a career ahead of him, he couldn't take the risk of speaking out. The person who had taken all the risks was Professor James McDonald. His criticism of the government had provoked powerful enemies, but it didn't stop him challenging the establishment with other unorthodox scientific theories. Years ahead of his colleagues, he predicted high-altitude aircraft would destroy the ozone layer and increase the risk of skin cancer. He was invited to address the US Congress, but during his testimony, a congressman made an opportunistic attack. He publicly ridiculed McDonald by saying he believed in UFOs and little green men. McDonald's professional reputation was ruined. James McDonald tried to create a climate of openness where unorthodox thinking could flourish. That's not what happened at Westall.
I remember the assembly that we're all called for.
We weren't even allowed to talk about it in school. We weren't allowed to mention it at all.
There's like 20 people plus in the room at the moment, and there's a real buzz, and everyone's talking about my story. They're talking about the story. And as they're talking it through, they're putting the pieces together. It's wonderful.
What isn't wonderful in the telling of this story is that Professor James McDonald finally gave up the fight for UFO science. Humiliated and broken, he took his own life. McDonald's suicide played on my mind. I began to think about weapons of mass destruction and global warming, where other brave scientists spoke out and were quickly shut down. I want my son to grow up in a world where it's possible to discuss and investigate even the craziest ideas without fear of ridicule or punishment.
It's fantastic.
Was it something from another planet at Westall? It certainly flew, as if it was. I'm left with the feeling that what people saw was what they said they saw. Something out of this world.
All I knew was what I saw, and it definitely was not any aircraft of the day by any stretch of the imagination, and it certainly was not a weather balloon.
It still would take me to my grave. What the hell was that?
It was amazing, and something that I've never forgotten. But you just sort of had it stored in the back of your mind because a lot of people are sceptical.
The fact that they can travel so fast and that they've been spotted all over the world, landings and very similar stories of these patches of flattened grass or burnt grass. I personally believe that there is something going on somewhere else.
I believe there's life out there. There is. I don't know what they look like, but I'm not afraid of them. I look up at the sky and say, "Look, where are you, you people? Come and talk to me."